this is Sierra and welcome to another video. Today we're doing another Hermitcraft Season Clockwork video. We are on episode 20. We are in chapter 6, which is a long one, so it will be only chapter 6. And chapter 7 and 8 probably might be combined together. We'll see. Chapter 6 is a long one, and I will forewarn you there is a cliffhanger. Alright, it's okay. It's okay. Let's get into it. A couple of months had passed since her arrival here in the lovely world, as the residents of this place like to call it, or at least the people she met anyway. She had no idea what Hittite and Vivadesh thought about it, nor did she care to. She was more focused on one thing, and so far she, Matthias, and Devon had gotten it as close as they possibly could, narrowing it down to a couple of places where they could be based on the reports by the helpers who had snuck over to have a look in secret. Both places were occupied by men, but only one could house the one thing they were looking for. She stood just up beyond the trees, looking into the area below as she waited for Matthias and Devon to return. They had gone in with invisibility potions to try and see whether or not there was a prisoner in the building anywhere. It had been about 5 minutes, and she was expecting them to return in 10. Was it enough time, though, to know for sure? Would they even be completely sure? They'd spent 2 months trying to figure this out, and had managed to get down to these two possibilities. One of them had to be it. She sighed as she shook her head, wishing she had fought a little harder in keeping the soup. It could have been far more helpful. I don't know what happened with that word. Helpful for Benji in the long run to finding him. The dog had done his best he could, though, which she was grateful for, but it still left them hunting and searching. The only hope she had that he was still alive were the occasional threats she found in notes scattered in random places where she would be. The man had to be still keeping an eye on her, unless he was giving them false hope, something the men would do. She shoved the thought out of her mind as she leaned closer, catching snippets of conversations below between two of Mr. men about some sort of task they had to go on in the next few days, if all went well. She wasn't exactly sure what the men meant, but they'd probably been told to torment someone else she probably didn't know. The 10 minutes finally passed as she watched the two soldiers disappear around the side of the other one-story building. This was their last chance to find him. They checked the portal every day to see if any changes were made, even though it probably didn't even matter, seeing as many of these bases had portals of their own that they could easily transport prisoners through. Just meant they probably wouldn't have used the one they knew about. She leaned back in frustration, looking around to try and spot the two escorts, at least a signal to show that they were all right. Her attention was diverted when she heard a twig snap behind her as her blood ran cold. She turned behind her, but there was nothing there. No shadow of a person, no scurrying of an animal, no sounds of a monster just minding its own business. Absolutely nothing. She didn't like the uneasy feeling she felt, though. Someone was watching her, waiting to see what she would do. Suddenly, a high-pitched shrill whistle filled the air as she looked back to the building as she saw a few men running out of the barracks as she felt a firm hand on her shoulder. She looked up as she saw the man she dreaded seeing. He smiled coldly. "Do you want to see him or not?" "Is he here?" she asked doubtfully, as the 3 men caught up with them and instinctively grabbed her before she had a chance to get away. "Would I lie to you if he wasn't?" the man asked, tilting his head. "Maybe," Jem admitted simply. You do like to mess with us, after all." The man laughed. "I'm giving you a chance to see him. I'm sure Archie will be delighted to meet you as well." Okay, 3 men just disappeared then. Unfortunate. I might make do. I got it. I'm sure RJ would be delighted to meet you as well." "RJ? Mr. A's not here," Jim asked in confusion. "He's busy elsewhere. RJ was asked to do this mission instead, and he is not doing a good job at it," the man retorted with a chuckle. Don't tell him I said that, though. Might as well, just spite. She narrowed her eyes. What is RJ trying to do with him? I can show you if you want, the man offered. I think not, a voice said from behind her as the man holding her grunted. Oh, there we go. As she pulled away, walking into the clearing as she watched Matthias and Devin coming to her aid. Oh, there we go. I forgot. We can stay with these men here. See if you can't find them. I did offer, the soldier said as he lifted a hand. If you don't do anything funny business, then fine, she said bitterly. And I won't tell RJ. That's a fair deal, the man smiled as he nodded over at the two other men. If she's not back in 5 minutes, you can have my head. I have a feeling I will allow that regardless, Matthias said, almost darkly. The man winked. It looked less suspicious this way. Wait, do you know each other or something? Shem asked curiously. Bribery. Leave him alone. Just shrugged. Threatened his family, you know the gist. She nodded, not wanting to ask any more questions as she walked towards the building. When she was out of earshot from the closet, she asked the command, Is that true? It's better if I offer to keep an eye on you as a secret agent than someone who actually would have seriously hurt you, the man admitted sheepishly. Besides, it's just a bit dramatic in its roleplay. She laughed. You had me, but why didn't you ask for the suit? It was gold, the man said with a shrug. She raised an eyebrow, but decided to drop the discussion. They were getting closer to where the soldiers would be able to hear them, so it would be better to keep up the storyline for now, whatever this was. They made to the front of the building as the guards stood tall, looking over the two of them quizzically. Why is she not tied up? She promised to cooperate, the man replied matter-of-factly. His face was straight and firm. You really trust that she won't try anything? The man asked, unconvinced. If she does, people will suffer. The man, he looked over her. Is that right? Yes, sir. She nodded her head, keeping her eyes to the floor. Submissive, defeated, helpless, unsuspecting. Very well. Take her to one of the cells, then, the man replied as he waved his hand towards them as if they were annoying flies. Jem didn't say a word as she walked into the open door, glancing back at the man warily. She wasn't completely sure that he was trustworthy yet, seeing as he was still in that uniform. They walked down the hallway, just past some rooms and some cells, as the man led her to the end of the hall, opening an iron door as he led to a flight of stairs. Down you go. He's down here, she asked quietly. Down and to the third door on the right, the man confirmed. I'm going to stay up here and wait for the others to come. Try to be quick if you can. She nodded her head slowly as she grabbed onto the railing and began her descent, climbing into the darkness as she blinked, walking down further and further on the spirally I cannot say that. For at least 5 intervals before finally seeing the end as she walked down a dimly lit hallway with doors on every side. She walked down until she made it to the third door on the right, looking over her shoulder one last time, not seeing anything amiss, before putting her ear to the door, listening. When she was confident that there wasn't something going on in the room, she opened it, stepped inside, blinking her eyes as her eyes adjusted to the medium-sized room with a tiled flooring. Something near the center of the left wall, some sort of cylinder with dispensers above. Some sort of redstone contraption she couldn't quite see as she walked closer to see that something was inside. Not just something, rather, someone. Scar? Jim whispered, seeing the YouTuber sitting down in his makeshift prison. He looked tired, thinner than she last remembered. She went closer, calling out his name again before he spotted her. Jim! The man explained with relief and excitement as he stumbled to his feet, leaning lightly against glass. You made it! Yeah, but what are you doing in there? She asked as she made it to the glass cylinder. This is what a guy thinks a good torture is, the YouTuber shrugged. When I refused to comply to his will, he fires down weakness or harming bushes at me. He even doused me with poison. What? She asked in stunned horror. What does he even want from you? The man smirked. Information I don't now have. She tilted her head in confusion. What do you mean? Tubin chuckled. Before he could respond to her question, he noticed something just behind her. As she followed her gaze, sees some men walking into the room. The door closed behind them. Two of the men were in Mr. A's classic uniform, but the third man was tall and lean, his features hollowed and cold. His eyes seemed to be the only thing that had some sort of warmth. It wasn't the reassuring kind. Looks like we have a visitor, the man said with a smile. When did you get here? She demanded. Her mind raced at the possibility of how they could have gotten past the man upstairs. Had he betrayed them after all? Or had he gone to get the others? I was down here in the basement office trying to talk about other methods regarding getting him to talk, but I think you might have helped us in more ways than one. The man smiled darkly. Stay away from her, Scar warned, putting his hand against the glass. What are you going to do about it, you tuber? The man asked curiously as he tilted his head, a smile, before looking up at her again. At least give us leverage against you. It at least gives us leverage against you. Jem took a step back as one of the men took out an ender pearl as he threw it. She ran away from the cylinder as the men lunged at her, tackling to the ground as she struggled. Let go of me, you pesky minion! The man on top of her only laughed as he pulled her up and brought her over to the furthest wall. As the second man went over to a strange panel of buttons as RJ stepped forward, looking between the two of them. One of you is going to give me something to work with. One way or another. Good luck with that, Jim demanded loudly. For all you know, I didn't come alone. Did you? The man asked simply, raising an eyebrow. Why would I tell you that? She spat. RJ smiled as he nodded over at the man with the panel. Pressed a button as something activated, and Jim watched as Scar was splashed with some sort of potion effect as he faltered. The expression on his face suggested he'd been doused with instant armor. How about we play a game? RJ asked brightly. I ask a question, and I get an answer. If I like the answer, your fellow friend is spared. If not, then they will suffer. Forget about me suffering, but why her? Scar asked helplessly. Scar asked. It's just enjoyable to watch you both squirm helplessly. The man chuckled as he looked over at him. Now enough questions from you. I want to ask 10 questions to you, and I expect an answer. His eyes were cold and hard as he stared at her, expectantly. She nodded her head slowly, deciding it was probably better to put up an act until she had an actual plan of action. Very good, the man said excitedly. First of all, would you like to tell me your name? Jem, she said defiantly. The man nodded his head. Now, how did you come to know your little friend here? Just stumbled upon something and decided to help out. She shrugged. It's really not that spectacular. Very well, the man smiled. Heard from my brother that he met your friend. Pearl, is that right? Yes, sir, the YouTuber replied. Are there other friends you have other than the hermits here? You pressed. She hesitated, looking over at Scar, seeing the subtle shake of his head. She took a breath. She shook her head as well. No, sir. These are the only friends I have. The man frowned. Such a shame. So little friends to count on. No one to call on for help. What would you do if all of those friends would simply disappear one day? I'd find out what happened to them, she said confidently. What if you couldn't? He continued. I would, she said firmly. Because when my friends disappear, it usually has something to do with you. Ah, yes, usually, the man mused. And why do you choose that word? Why are we even going with this? Where are we even going with this? Jem said quickly, getting rather annoyed at these questions. Just want to make sure I understand what you're getting at and why'd you go out of your way just for one person, the man smiled. When he clearly has friends that I want and to know more about. Has he told you about them? Not really. I never needed to know, she said, puzzled and confused, looking over Scar. I gave her a subtle wink. Which confused her even more. What did he know that wasn't clicking for her? Why did he seem so calm about it? Wouldn't you agree that friends should let their friends know about their fellow friends in case something happened to them? RJ asked slowly. Depends on the situation, Jem replied. Elaborate, the man pressed. She shook her head. You should be focused more on more important questions about my own than about my own opinions. You obviously don't care about those. The man frowned as he looked over at the other YouTuber in the glass cylinder, over to the soldier by the panel, and back towards her. Do you really want to test my patience? She smiled. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just making you waste all your 10 questions. I have one more, don't I? The man asked. Not anymore, she chuckled. That was your last one. Are you trying to be smart with me right now? The man snapped, a little bit harsher than his tone from before. She shrugged, smiled. The man sighed. It's no longer your turn anyway. I'll spare what I have planned for your punishment later. Right now, I want to talk to this one. Don't intervene, or else. Or else what? She pressed. Hearing a button being pressed, something clicked. Splashing noises could be heard as Scar groaned within the cylinder, faltering a little bit with a pained expression. That was a warning. I could do much, much worse. YouTuber. The man told her simply as he turned to face Scar. I have a name, you know, she pestered. The man ignored her as he began to speak again, this time a bit more firm and determined. Now, that wasn't so odd, was it? It wasn't, but the both of us won't make it easy for you to get what you want. As you could clearly see, Scar said matter-of-factly. I do see, the man replied as he nodded over at the man by the panel. He pressed another button as Scar groaned again, flinching a little bit as Jem struggled against the man, pinning her to the wall. You know very well what I want, and you will tell me one way or another. It's just wishful thinking, Scar replied as he lifted his chin, being doused by another splash of harming as he closed his eyes, pushing it back this time. Regardless of whether you like it or not, you know I'm right. I think we need a stronger dose for the next one, she told the soldier, who nodded his head as he readjusted a few things. The man looked back at the YouTuber, smiled. Now tell me, what do you know about your friends back in the village? I'm telling you honestly, that I can't tell you, Scar said, full determination in his voice. The man scowled as he turned away from the YouTuber and looked over at the soldier, who pressed the button as Jem watched as suspenses fired a little bit more heavily as Scar gasped in pain, falling to his knees, looking down to hide his face. What are you doing? Jem demanded angrily as she tried to kick the man holding her. You're hurting him. That's the point. To make your kind suffer for what I desire from them, the man said, RJ said swiftly, as he glanced over at her. She wasn't looking at the man, though. Her eyes fixed on Scar seemed to be shaking a little bit, whether from pain, crying, or both. They needed to get out of here, and the others had to be coming by now, right? What was holding them up? In this case, he knows much more about his friends than I do, and I want to know what makes them tick. I won't tell you anything, Scar insisted through gritted teeth. I think some poison might lighten you up a little bit. The man smiled coldly as the soldier flipped another switch, and something clicked and some green splattered onto Scar as he groaned, crumpling to the rest away to the ground. Scar! Jem cried in alarm as she managed to pull away from her captor just as the door banged open and Matthias and Devon entered the room. Hope and release filled her as she saw them, their swords in hand, ready for battle. Help had finally arrived. Unfortunately, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This was a longer chapter, but that means chapter 7 and 8 will be quickly over with. And then I have no other choice but to continue the next story. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one, whenever that might be.